Hey, what's up guys? Thanks for stopping by the channel. So for this video, we're going to be taking a look at a dive watch from the brand DOXA, which, let's face it, kind of has a cult status among dive watch enthusiasts. And this Swiss brand has done a lot to revitalize their 300 subline as of late, and they actually released a forged carbon version of the watch that's selling very well. But for this particular review, we're taking a look at my first experience with the brand. So on the wrist, I picked up the DOXA 750T, which has their iconic orange dial and was actually produced in the early 2000s. So you can't buy the 750T anymore. It was limited to around 5,000 pieces in total, and it's slightly larger than the DOXA 300 submersible models that are currently available. So why don't we flip the camera around now, and I'll show you guys this watch up close and give you my thoughts on how well the 750T has held up over the past 20 years. Alright, so we do have a DOXA 750T in the studio right now. So why don't we crunch the numbers on this watch first, and then I'll talk about some of the unique DOXA design features for this timepiece. I get a total case diameter of 45 millimeters. That's from one end of a cushion case to the other. But this watch does wear a lot smaller than that would suggest, because the bezel and the dial itself are significantly smaller. The overall dial rule state is only 30 millimeters, so this watch really wears like a 41 or 42 millimeter diver, in my opinion. Now, if you flip the watch to the side, lug to lug is only 47 millimeters, and case height comes in at 13.7 millimeters. That is from the bottom of a screwed-in case back to the top of this very thick and robust sapphire crystal, which helps this watch sustain its 750 meter water resistance rating, as you would expect from the naming convention 750T. One other metric to consider is the lug opening for the supplied beads of rice bracelet. It's a little bit interesting because I actually get the lug gap at 21 millimeters, but as soon as you get past this end link, I find the bracelet is a straight 20 millimeter width, until you get to the DOXA signed clasp, and it also has what I believe they call the jellyfish logo on it. But on the wrist, this watch wears extremely comfortable and suits my 19 centimeter circumference wrist very well. So that's 7.5 inches, but I do believe even if you have like a 6.5 inch wrist, you can pull this watch off because of a cushion case, the short lug to lug, and just how well planted the watch stays on the wrist. Now, the way it's currently sized up on the bracelet comes in at a comfortable 184 grams. So it does give you some wrist presence with the colorway, the overall heft, and the nice design and build quality. So the first DOXA design feature I want to talk to you guys about is that hallmark orange colorway for the dial. And this was done with a lot of research in close collaboration with the diving community, because most divers wanted a watch that was very legible at depth, and orange happens to be one of the most legible colors when you go saturation diving. If you combine that with the handset and the hour markers that are bordered in black and have white paint running through the center of them, you get an extremely legible watch in most lighting situations. And I will mention that the white paint in the center of the hour markers and handset is nicely loomed up with Swiss Superluminova, although I will say that the lume on this watch is significantly brighter on the handset, as well as that luminous pearl on the bezel, compared to the actual hour markers. That said, the way they designed the watch orientation is extremely easy to do. And that brings me to another cool design feature with the way they did the hands. You can see that the minute hand is significantly larger than the hour hand, and that is because that's what divers really do care about when they're considering their bottom time when diving. And you use that minute hand in conjunction with another unique feature of this watch, which is their dive bezel, which has amazing bezel action and grip. It's got like a sawtooth pattern. It's 120 click unidirectional, and the detents are very precise and audible. And if you take a closer look at the bezel, you can actually see two rows of text. There's like a brushed inner flange, just has a 0 to 60 markings on it. And then you have an outer, more polished portion of the bezel that has orange printing on it that shows you how deep you can go underwater, and it corresponds to how long you can stay there without making decompression stops. So for example, if you were to read the 30-minute index on this bezel, you can see that the outermost portion has 90 written on it, which indicates to the diver that they can go a depth of 90 feet for 30 minutes before they have to undergo decompression stops. Any longer or deeper underwater than that, and they might succumb to what's known as decompression sickness or the bends, and they couldn't ascend right away without first making some decompression stops safely. Now, my research on this specific watch brings me to the conclusion that it's about circa 2005. You can see I'm definitely not the original owner, and there's some nice scuffs on it. But the build quality has held up very well, and the automatic movement running inside this watch is fairly accurate still. It's running an ETA 2824-2, and for my personal wearing experience, it's dropping about a few seconds per day. But there really isn't any beat error when I put this watch on the time grapher, which is pretty impressive. So this movement is a fairly standard Swiss workhorse movement. You get about a 38-hour power reserve. It does tick away at 28,800 vibrations per hour. It is hacking and hand wind if you unscrew the threaded crown for this watch. And this movement is accompanied by a 3 o'clock date cutout here, which I think actually matches the way they did the hour markers quite well. So the symmetry of this watch is actually surprisingly good in my opinion, and that's also considering the off-centered text when you have like the sub 750T written in the right lower quadrant here, and DOXA written in the upper left-hand margin of the dial. Alright, so the case of the DOXAs are also quite unique in the sense they do have this nice cushion case that breaks up the midsection of the watch very nicely. You can see how tall the bezel sits proud of that, and the fact that it's a much smaller diameter than the overall case. And then I'll flip over the watch and show you guys the case back. So you can see the Jennyfish logo that's dead center there. This is a professional limited edition model. I think the serial number on mine is 4058 of 5000. So it's fairly high in the limited edition series that was produced for this specific 750T. And then you can see the bottom of the beads of rice bracelet here has a fairly short and well articulating end link to the head of the watch there. And then of course, when looking at the rest of this bracelet, I mean, you can just see this beautiful drape that this bracelet has. It folds flat completely over the case back, which is really cool. Now, earlier versions of this watch, I believed, were fixed with pin-in collars for the individual links. But for this one, it does have screw pins, which I actually prefer. You do get about 3 levels of micro adjustment on the clasp here. And there is also a pull-out diver's extension if you're actually going to throw this watch over a wetsuit. And as a whole, guys, I'm really impressed with how well this DOXA 750T has held up since the early 2000s. I don't know that this is an everyday watch, but this is definitely a watch that I like to pull out and wear when I'm going for something a little bit more colorful. And the comfort on this watch is definitely there. I find that as a larger diver, this watch is actually the most comfortable timepiece I've ever tried. But guys, if you have any specific questions about this watch, feel free to let me know in the comments section of this video. If you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. It helps out a ton. I do want to thank you for watching this video to the end, and as always, I'll catch you guys in the next one.